Budget is really the device whereby sort of scarce resources in a society are basically allocated among people to respond to basic needs, so health, education, defense, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, they really affect the entire collectivity and they cut across the political systems, stakeholders, shareholders, etc. It is really the center sort of engine. And one thing that we have rediscovered, perhaps in the last 20 years or so, budget are also a key instrument for kind of managing macroeconomic. Budgeting has been kind of the realm of the practitioners for many years. About 20 or 30 years ago, perhaps, somebody said that budget is really sort of an intrinsically political process, and it's true, and we perhaps sort of forgot a little bit this very basic sort of statement. And that's why kind of translating this into the real world, talking about reforms, there are sophisticated sort of models and methodologies and tools, but at the end of the day, to make it real is always more complex than we think, exactly, because in the end it's a political process. Yes, it involves negotiations, involves to some extent dealing and wheeling among quite a plethora of actors. If you think of an average state, you have central and provinces and regions and municipalities. Increasingly you have concern in terms of supranational, look at Europe. So this really complicates to a degree that there are only kind of very few people that get sort of the entire picture and the complications that are involved. So that's the real world really makes it. Somebody used at the conference the word messy, and it is in the end, in spite of all the effort to put it as elegantly, as rationally as we would like, there's sort of this element will always be there to a large extent. The answer is yes. Now, one can always question whether it has sort of changed or progressed as fast as we should. One key lessons, in a way, is the usual sort of kind of blessing in disguise, as they say. I mean, the European crisis, the financial crisis, was a bit of an eye-opener, kind of represented to us a set of issues that we thought had been solved, perhaps, and perhaps had been overlooked instead. So again, was quite interesting, and one of the concepts that was really stressed during the conference was emphasis on learning. Again, this is an area, clearly the budget being in the real world, it really reflects very much what happens in the real world. So the interconnectedness, globalization, free movement of capital, so on and so forth, is reflecting the budget. The very notion of the budget is becoming sort of somewhat narrow. We tend to speak of broader public financial management these days. So again, going back to the question, it certainly evolved, has changed, but it's still a kind of learning process, and it's a learning process that will probably never end in a way, because these areas is basically bound to continue constantly evolve over the next years.